Hello. Hi. Did you finish with Jeremy?
Yeah, we have finished it.
You finished it?
Yeah.
Okay. I will cover a little bit of tutorial. Yeah. That I promised in the calendar. So let me check. Let me check that. Okay. And if you have any question or if you want to know anything, like let's use this hour to do that, okay? So I promise, I just like found some of you might need these skills. So modeling tips for clean geometry using Quaddraw in Maya. Okay, so let me just go through that. And if you guys have any question, if you want to know something, please let me know. Okay, I'm going to cover these three things. So for okay, modeling tips for clean geometry using Quaddraw in Maya. Okay. So I guess maybe many of you already know. I'm going to just introduce you what Quaddraw is because it's really handy. But let me bring some reference model. So let me get something. Give me 1 second. Okay, I have a site model. Looks like this. So it's just a random site model, just for the sake of this exercise. So let me just bring this in. 90-degree. Okay, this looks like this. And it's a really heavy, dirty, whatever mesh. So this is not our site though. It's just an example. So what if you want to like make some really nice modification of the site? So let me show you how you can like rebuild some of these geometries in Maya using Quaddraw. Okay, so once you have this terrain mesh, this is input terrain. You might want to have it unselectable. So you can create a layer by adding plus here. And you can say right click, sorry. So right click, say add selected object to this layer so you can turn on and off. And you can also press T to make it wireframe visible, but you cannot select it. Or you can press one more time. So it's our render view, and then you cannot select. So that's really handy. So you can turn on and off the wireframe to see how busy and non-modifiable this geometry is. So it's very probable that you will get a like dirty or a dirty geometry, or that doesn't work with your own topography or typology. Topography of your own massing model. So what if you want to do something here? Maybe you want to build some nice landscape a nice hole, nice bridge or connections, it's better if you just redraw this geometry. So the best way or easiest way to really work with is Quaddraw. Of course, what you can do is you can draw a mesh like that. This is non-quad mesh way of doing it. So you can just have more subdivision, obviously. And you just modify points one by one, right? But that's a lot of work, isn't it? So you need to match by eyeballing it. Maybe you can use maybe even soft selection to move things up and down. But this will take a lot of time to just match every single one of it, yeah? So Quaddraw is really good tool that helps you to create new typology for different like complex geometries. So we are going to use this icon here. It's called Quaddraw. And you wanna click on this geometry because we want to trace this geometry, and select this one and say live. So you should click on this magnetic button. So this says make the selected object live. Once you select it, this will turn green. And you will see something has changed here. So if you can turn on and off to see what has been changed. So you select it and turn it on. You see that there is this kind of thing happening. So right now, whatever you are drawing here, it's going to snap to this geometry. And once this geometry became live, it's not selectable anymore. So once it's live, whatever you draw, for example, if you draw a curve, it draws on top of this geometry. This is really handy. So if you want to draw something on some like complex geometry, you can also use this way to do that. Okay, but we are not going to draw a curve. We are going to draw a mesh on top of this. So we are going to start using this Quaddraw. You need to learn some shortcuts. So let's have a look and see more. Let's not use this one. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to go to a website, Google, and then I'm going to search Maya Quaddraw shortcuts. Yeah, and this is from Maya APK documentation. It doesn't matter. I'm using 2018. This documentation is for 2020. That's fine. And this is the hotkey. Yeah, and there are not many. So I'm going to always refer to this hotkey. So I'm going to put this on the side. I have two screens. So I'm going to put this on the side. I'm going to show you which key I'm using every time I draw, okay? So first, I'm going to say Quaddraw. I click on this button. And I'm going to use tab key. So that is here, tab and drag. Tab and drag to extend an edge or create a new quad stripe. So let me show you what that means. So I say tab and drag. I'm using my mouse to drag. And I'm gonna use Alt to rotate around to see how this actually helps me to draw something. So tab and draw. You can draw however you want, any kind of geometry. And it's going to snap to this terrain. So any complex geometry, you can recreate this topology. but always try to be more sensitive or sensible to what you want. So for example, if your architecture needs a hole here, maybe this is a good typology. So it really depending on your own project. But in my opinion, I'm going to go back to this draw. I think when I draw something, I would try to follow the terrain geometry. Yeah, and try to make everything quad. So quad meaning it has four edges. Yeah, so never, try not to create triangular face. So triangular face is considered not a good mesh, or if you have any face that has T junction is also not considered as a good polygon. Okay, so that is tab. And after you have tab, you can also use tab and middle mouse drag to change the size of your draw quad. So I can also make a larger geometry. Yeah, but I would be very consistent with my with the amount and size of the topography. Yeah, so I'm going to go back to my size around there and draw. Okay, this was a little bit too small, so I'm going to expand this size a little bit more. Tab, it's too big. Tab. Okay, I'm going to go around this weird thing. Tab. And tab. Oh, tab. Okay, so let's say if I'm happy with this typology, I can close this by saying shift. So if you have 4 points, it helps you to, if you press shift, it automatically calculates or guesses which face you wanna put. Yeah, and I'm going to deselect B, which is soft selection, and you can always just move any edges or points around. So it's really malleable and easy to work with this kind of geometry. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to make a closed geometry here. So let me just finish it up by having a good terrain geometry somewhere here, following my typology of the ground, which I feel like it's going to be more, makes more sense. Okay. So yeah, I feel like this is going to be a good base. Maybe I want to have one more base geometry over here. You can always move anything. Also, it's always good to have same amount of geometry. So I'm going to draw up. You can also say tab and extrude a edge. Okay. Now this is pretty good. I'm going to start to close it by shift. Shift. If you have this kind of situation, you can say Control Shift to delete. Yeah, and you can always move things around to create a meaningful geometry. Let me just do this a little bit more and give you some more example why this is useful. So I'm going to use shift, 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 shift. The reason I do like this is I can use fill hole later to just fill every hole. It's easier. So I'm going to use shift. Okay, so this is not good. So I can always make another edge by saying control to edit. So they are all here. So control click, insert an edge loop. And shift drag is shift middle. No, I think you need to shift click, shift control click to delete the component. Yeah. So if I want to delete the edge, I can say shift control. If I want to add, it's control. Okay. Shift to add. Shift. Okay, I need one more edge here. One more edge. I need one more edge here. Control, shift. I need to delete this. I say control shift. Shift, shift. And shift middle click is relax. Sometimes it relaxes. But I think it's fine. Let me just finish up a few more and then I'm gonna give you some more further example. Shift, 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 shift. You can always come back and massage the geometry. Shift, shift, oops, shift, oops, shift. Oh, sorry. Shift, okay. I need one more edge here. Shift, 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 control, alt to move, shift, and shift. Shift to connect this guy. Okay. Okay. This looks good to me. I can always come back. What if, okay, let me show you one more thing. What if you accidentally went out of this command? So you accidentally went out. So this is the original geometry. I can isolate this one to show you. Yeah, it looks like this now. So now you're not in the quad mode anymore. Yeah, but you can always come back by just clicking on this. Yeah. And if I'm out of this Quaddraw mode, I can fill this hole by selecting all of these edges here. This doesn't have hole. And I can say mesh, fill hole. Oops, it added some weird hole. So I can come back and delete that like that one. So I think maybe one big hole was filled. So I'm going to just delete that one. But all the other holes were fixed. Okay, so if I press 3, it gives me a little bit better geometry. Okay, so let me just finish this off by feeling something went wrong here. Okay, I think it made a big geometry mesh here. So I'm going to delete that. Okay. Okay. Now it's good. So I'm going to use shift to finish this off. Shift. It's possible that sometimes it doesn't matches. That's fine. Also, sometimes I feel like there are too many edge loop here. I can say Control Shift to delete some of these lines. You can also delete and also add back. Because it's always snapping to the original geometry, so it doesn't lose too much. Okay, Shift and Shift. Let's just add one more geometry here. Okay, almost there, almost there. Control Shift, and Shift, Shift. Okay, I can use Tab to expand and make one more shift to this one. Okay, great. Yeah, so I'm gonna select these edges. So if you select the outer edge, it's going to create like the big surface. So I try not to select the outer edge and go to my mesh fill hole. Great. So I have this geometry. Of course, you can close this up, or if you don't really need this typology there, you can delete it. Maybe I can just fill this guy back by going back to my Quaddraw, press 1 and Shift to add this up. Yeah, so gonna delete this. You can delete this and then add one more here. Okay. Nice. Now you can press 3. And basically, in your original model, maybe you want to find a good balance between these edges. But maybe in your project, maybe you have built everything, but like only place that you need is this area. So make sure you cut this really well, so you don't have a weird overlap. So try to make the transition quite well. Yeah, I would just crop this in Rhino, like more properly. I mean this surface, yeah. Okay, but for now, let me just turn off this live geometry. And I'm going to make a copy just in case. Control D, Control H. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a box. Normally, doing Boolean operation in Maya is not really good. So I don't recommend you to do that. But okay, so I'm going to cut this geometry according to this guy. So let me see if I can do that. I normally don't do Boolean operation in Maya. So terrain, quad, let me see, quad draw tutorial. Okay. Let me see if I can Boolean difference these two. Something went wrong. Normally it's not good. So especially this kind of really complex geometry. So just cut it in Rhino. Okay, I'm not going to bother too much. Yeah, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just delete those faces just for this exercise. Yeah, don't do it like this, please. I'm going to just delete these faces. So I make sure that where I'm rebuilding, I don't have anything overlapping. So I can create anything underneath there. But of course, you want to do it after you have built this Quaddraw. Okay. And the best scenario is that the edge is really, really clean and it's invisible. Okay, but now this is your terrain. So you can build anything here. And it's so much easier to modify this one compared to the previous version. Okay, so let me try something. For example, now I can, let's say now I can do some tunnel, right? So what if I want to make some like really nice tunnel? So let me see if I can add some edge loop there. Let me see if I can add one more edge loop. We'll add more edge loop. Okay. I'm going to turn this wireframe on. Oops, no. Let's say Q to select. And I can start to going to add more edge loop. More edge loop. Okay, now I'm going to use my face, Q, select the face, and move it in. So this creates quite interesting terrain geometry for me. Yeah. And I can manipulate the position. I can also make some of this into some landscape. No, there are so many things now you can control. You can also use this to create some staircase elements. And if your typology, if you don't like this kind of direction, you can make your typology, your Quaddraw, to be a different direction, right? So right now, because we made like in this direction, you have this direction. But if your Quaddraw was something like that, maybe you could have made some terrains in that direction as well. Yeah, so let me turn off. And if I just change the render quality higher a little bit, you can do something more interesting. What else can we do? For example, okay, another thing you can maybe do is you can, let me make some steps. So let me add some insert edge loop to add multiple geometries. Okay, let me add 20. Okay. So what if I want to make some staircase or steps? Let me do it on the other side. Let's say, okay, I want to do it here. Okay, so say Q. Going to select every other one. And I'm going to say slide edge, but not everything, sorry. Not everything, but only these two edge. Sorry. Only these two edges. Only this one edge, let's say. So I'm gonna slide edge and slide to the top and bring it down. So I make some steps and then I'm going to select all of these edges. Sorry. Select all of these edges. Just double click. So if I press 3, it's still smooth. It doesn't show too much of this edge. So you can use crease and middle mouse click to boost it up to create some sharpness. So this is before crease, after crease. Okay. And you can also make the smooth mesh render quality higher so you can see better result. So if you want to have some stepping, I see this is not very clear. I wish these, okay, I know what I want. I wish they were coming from maybe one line. So I could maybe, for example, I could have pushed all of these points to one point. Let me just show you quickly. Let's say I have these points. They were coming from that point. Yeah, if they were coming from one point, this will look more dramatic. Okay, let me just. Okay, now if I press 1, it has that. And for example, if you have the biggest step to be pushed away, you can also have some square. You can also bring some of these surfaces up. You can really play with the landscape however you want. So if you don't have this base geometry, it's very difficult. Yeah, I think it's really fun to work with this method. Yeah, if you are interested in, of course, yeah. And of course, afterwards, you can also use that to change your material. For example, I can apply different material here. I'm going to put some green. that doesn't look very nice. Yeah, but what if I want the interior to be different color? Something darker, for example. Yeah, a lot of things can be possible. No, that's really interesting. Maybe you have like this weird theme that travels around your landscape. Yeah, you have different pockets of things. Yeah, but you don't like this too much. Yeah, let me play with these lines, for example. Oh, also, if you still have your original geometry that didn't cut, you can still keep it hidden in your layer, but you can still make this live. And then you can always go back to your Quaddraw. So even if you have all this modification, if you are still in Quaddraw mode, you can still move your points around. It's still snapping to the geometry. So what if I, bad thing is you cannot select multiple points here. Yeah, that is some downside. But let's see, what if I, okay, that's fine. I'm gonna go out from the Quaddraw mode. Just wanted to have a bigger gap here. So I'll show you how you can make it playful. Okay, this is live, that's why. So what if you don't make it live? So it's still on an undulating terrain, but you can work with this line. Right? You can also be creative for yourself. So there, these lines are curvy, not just following your line of your terrain lines, but it does something you want. Anyways, so for this, do you have any question about this Quaddraw exercise? Okay. If not, let me go back to my next exercise. So modeling tips for clean landscape model in Grasshopper. Glass mullions in Maya. Extracting wireframe. Okay, let me cover this one first. So, okay. So let me show you why this was important, or in which project you can use this. For example, in one of our student work from Diba and Jesse, for example. Okay, and many of you have this problem. So a lot of you have a very curvy linear, like very curvy geometry, right? But you, even if they're not glass, you will need to show, if this is made out of, for example, concrete, right? You need to show the seam, right? And what is the best way to extract this? theme wireframe. Let me think. Okay, so let's say this project may be a good example. If you have a curvy geometry, you need to divide this into a theme, right? So how do you extract these kind of lines, meaningful lines? Okay, so that is about this tutorial. All right, maybe I can just use this one as a reference. But let me go back to the original geometry. Control D, Control H, and I'm gonna use this one as an example. Okay, what if this is your facade, yeah? And you really like this wireframe, but if you press 1, this is too thin, too kinky. It's not smooth enough, right? So before you bring this into Maya or Rhino, for example, you will have to, let me just bring these two together. You will have to smooth this by either one more time or 2 more times, right? So let me say apply. So I'm not pressing 3 at all. I'm watching this curvature. This is probably not smooth enough for your render. So I'm going to further smooth it 1 more degree. Okay, this looks okay, but if you have like really crazy geometry, you might need to even smooth it 3 times in order to make it look very smooth, yeah? But then if you extract all of these wireframe lines, there are too many lines, right? So you might like this level of wireframe, but on this smoothness, yeah? So in order to do that, before you smooth it, you copy this out and select edge and select all of these lines. And right click in the hierarchy or outliner and say, oh no, not here, sorry. So from here, say create and go to set, or you can just do it by spacebar, create, set, and create a set. So you see in the outliner, a new set is created. So these sets are these edges. So what this does is if you deselect it and you accidentally deselected it, but you always want to come back to these sets of selection, you can come back and right click and say select set member. So you are coming back to select specific items. Okay, now once you do that, once you have this set, now you can feel free to smooth it. So I'm going to smooth it 3 times. Yeah, similar to the same as that one. And now I'm going to right click and say select set members. And it only selects these edges. So now what I can do is I can do 2 things, either extrude this as meshes, or I can go to my modeling curves and duplicate surface. Let me see if this is the right one. Let me see, duplicate surface curve. Maybe that is not the one. It stopped. Oh my God. Okay, if this doesn't come back. Okay, oh, okay, created, yeah. But all of these are, I'm going to group this, Control G, yeah. These are like really small segments of lines. And you can bring this into Rhino and type it, yeah. And that might be the best way of extracting those lines. Or, so these are the lines. Or you can also extrude this. For example, if these are glazing glass, yeah. So I can say extrude, Control E, and extrude this just a little bit. But you might want some thickness, yeah. So I know this is probably enough. If you want to differentiate the material, you can select from now, select, convert selection to faces. So you convert the selection to this face, and you can apply different material. Or you can even extract this out. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just delete. So I'm gonna shift, select to invert the selection and delete it. So I have a thin layer of surface. And I have this glass. I'm just considering this as a glass for now, glass facade. And I'm going to add a glass material. Just something transparent. Transparency. Okay. Yeah. And you can see that this is too thin. Yeah, there's no thickness. So sometimes you don't even really see anything. So how do you fix that? So there is a little bit of things that you need to consider here. So let me just show you. Let me just show you from a bigger perspective. So let me just grab this portion just to show you what's happening when you extrude. So when you extrude this kind of edges, so Control E, and I have extruded this. What happens is I'm gonna just add Lambert. If you just extrude this, if you go to the lighting setting and turn on the two-sided light, you can see that especially these ones, the normals are fucked up. Yeah, it's like, so let me just clean this up. And if you just extrude these ones now to give a thickness, it ends up doing that. That's not what you want. So what do you need to do? You need to have all of them to conform. So go to your this mesh display and conform. Once you say conform, they always try to guess the best normal and match the normal direction. So now if you extrude this one, it's extruding more correctly than before. Yeah. So we cannot do too much on these edges, but these edges are special case. And if you don't extrude too much, it's not of too much a big problem. Yeah. So what I always do is I always extrude them like that. And you have to, let me just show you in white material. Yeah, you see that they are all different direction. Do you see that? Yeah. So what I do, I always conform the direction after selecting this geometry. Conform. Okay. make sure that there is no single surface that has non-continuous normal. If you want to fix one by one, you can also select and just forcefully flip it reverse. So if you are more picky on that, you can also do that. But okay, this is not a same segment, so I'm gonna just ignore it and just say extrude. I'm going to extrude just a little bit. So from far, it's enough. Yeah, that's not really good. So it's better if you just have everything in the same normal, but it's better than nothing. This is better than nothing. This is probably lighter than extruding or piping from the curves. So at least from far enough, this is good enough. So it's better than just thin layer of surface. It's better if you have some kind of extrusion. Okay, so that was about creating wireframe. Was that making sense for you? Was that okay?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
All right, cool. Okay. So last, maybe this one was I thought of this from Michael's exercise. Yeah, let me just show you what we were trying, maybe so you know what we are trying to cover here. So it's gonna be very fast. So in Michael, Hiwat, and Nihao's project, they're creating like this kind of project, and their landscape lines look like that. So what they're trying to do is they want to copy a lot of similar singular elements into a more with controlled guideline within the geometry. So this is also similar to what Wei Jie and Thomas is doing, but they are doing this in 3D. So like something like that, but like basically copying singular elements like with a guide curve. Yeah. So maybe if you're familiar with Grasshopper, maybe you already know how to do that. But let me just quickly show you in case this will be useful for you. And for that exercise, I'm also going to use this one as a base geometry. So let me come back and bring this. So, oops. Okay, this is turning on. So I'm going to copy this, Control D and Shift H. Okay, this one. Okay, if you happen to have this kind of situation, you can go to your camera and make the far clip far. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna use this one. So this one, in order to bring this into Rhino, you will have to change this into nerve surface. Or you can, there are two ways to do it. You can smooth it in Rhino and bring it as mesh. Let me just show you both. Okay. So I'm going to show you how to import this into Rhino properly. Okay, so first thing is you smooth this here. So you go to So you smooth it in Rhino, and everything you need to press 1. You should not rely on number 3 view mode. Okay. So I smoothed it, but this is still mesh. Or I change this, modify, convert this from polygon to sub D, And then sub D, you see this icon, that's sub D icon. And then sub D to nerves. And then you add the original material. Yeah. So this one is already a nerve surface now. So if you bring this into Rhino, you can cut and do whatever. This one is still mesh. So this is two different ways of bringing it in. But one thing that you need to note is when you smooth this or when you convert this into nerves from Maya, you will lose this edge. So if you really require this sharp angle, you might need to work with this method. Or if this, like for example, this terrain, I don't really need to work with these edges. The only surface, the surfaces are what I'm interested in. So maybe it's okay for you to just change this to nerves. There are two different, you need to export this differently. So if you are using mesh and exporting it, so you select the mesh, say select export selection and say terrain mesh as OBJ or STL or FBX. But for nerves, you cannot use those formats. So nerve surface looks like that. So I'm gonna select this geometry, select all of them, file, export selection, and you have to find something called IGES export. So nerves geometry can be exported as IGEX or FBX. Okay, so that's terrain nerves. If you don't have IGEX exporter, you need to go to Windows. Where's the plugin manager? I forgot. Windows setting plugin manager. And it's called direct connection or something. Let me see. It's either called, that's OBJ exporter. IGEX, yeah. So for different Maya version, maybe it calls differently. So if you see something called IGES something, that's it. You can load it and see if you see that option. If you still don't see it, find something called direct connection or direct exporter, or just search Maya, your version, if you are using 2019 IGEX exporter plugin, and you can find the name. Okay, so once you have that, you can bring it in. Let me show you. So if you have this OBJ file, import it or open or whatever, and in the shaded mode, it looks like this. And if you click on it, it says it's a mesh. If I bring this IGES in, import file, say yes. Okay, go went there. I don't know why. Let's bring this in. It must be some, yeah, import options or export options. That's fine. And this is proper nerve surface. So this is a surface. So if you have a surface, you can easily draw something. For example, you can draw a line, curve. You draw a curve. It's maybe your landscape curve. this is drawn in a 2D base, right? So I'm going to say curve Boolean, making a closed line. Yeah. And I can say I can split this thing. And it's easy to split and apply different color, for example. You can also even extrude this surface. Maybe that's your something. I don't know. But if this is a mesh, you cannot do too much Boolean operation. So if you want to still do that, what you can do is, what I normally do is I change this to nerves by saying mesh to nerves. What this does is it creates one surface, single surface per quad face. So this will become pretty heavy. So I don't really recommend this. Yeah. So yeah, you can see that now each of the mesh face is becoming a polygon. So this is a polygon. It's not a surface anymore. It's a polysurface. But you can still do this. You can still project things, but they are not continuous surface. Like this one is a continuous surface. This one, if you zoom in, like really zoom in, they are actually a kinky surface. But you smoothed it in Maya, so it's smooth enough for your eye. Yeah, but if you zoom in closely, it doesn't. But you can still say split. You can do all the operations, all the surface-based operations, but it's gonna be heavier. Yeah, it takes more time. Okay. I'm going to just go to that grasshopper exercise. Okay. Grasshopper. Okay, now it's connected and cut, and you can do whatever you want. Yeah. It's just heavier than this method. Yeah, because this is single surface, but this still also works. Yeah. So it depends. But I recommend if you can afford to rebuild it really nicely and then work with this method. Okay. So I'm going to use my IGS geometry. And I'm going to, from my top view, try to project few interesting lines. For example, I'm going to project few curvature. Or let me just use just boxes, rectangle. Okay, I think that's fine. It's a rectangular geometry and I have a guide curve. So I'm going to try to populate this guy along this curve. Okay. So that will be my two-dimensional input. This is happening in 2D. Okay, so I'm gonna bring a curve. This is going to be my guide curve. Right click and then I say guide curve. And I'm going to put a geometry, which is this one. I put geometry because it can be curved, it can be anything. So set one geometry, and then I say base geometry or base component. Right click, set one curve, right click, set one geometry. Okay. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to divide this curve, divide this curve with certain amount of number. So I can maybe say, okay, maximum 200. So I can change the slider to control how many components I wanna copy. Yeah. And this is my base geometry. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this geometry from this point to these points. So if I use orient direction, I'm going to use my base geometry from the first point. So I have a lot of points as a result, right? These are all the points. So I'm going to just use the first one. So use item. So I'm going to just select the zeros item, which is the first point. What I'm gonna say is I'm going to select, I'm going to orient, copy from the first point to these points. So that oriented. But this one also allows you to control the direction, which is great. So we can get the tangent direction from here. So I'm going to select from the first tangent to all the point tangent. So now if you change this geometry, change this curve, it follows. Okay. Another thing that you can play with is the size. Okay. There are many ways to attract different size. Also, you can change the original geometry rotation to change the relationship with the tangent. Okay, let me just add something for the curvature. Okay. So right now, okay, the parameter of this curve is from 0 to whatever. Like right now it's 0 to 600 something. So you should right click and say reparameterize this curve in order to stretch the parameter from 0 to 1. So we can scale this geometry according to the parameter. So I'm going to say scale all of these geometries according to their position, like that. And the factor is based on this parameter. So I'm going to use graph mapper to convert from the number 0 to 1 into something else. So I'm going to right click, graph types to be Bezier. And then I'm going to say from 0 to 1 will become, will convert to 0.5 to 2.5. You can always change this number, and that will be your resulting. Yeah. So now when the parameter is 0, it became 0.5 scale. And when the parameter is bigger, it became 2.5 scale. So you can use this graph to control the size around this geometry. You can also change the graph type to something else, whatever you want. Yeah, this is also quite fun. Yeah, I can play with it. If you want to change this parameter, you can right click, double click, and add more value, 4.5. Yeah, for example, if you want to add more points, add more points. Okay. All right. Yeah. And I'm going to just bake all of this geometry, bake it. So now I have them, all of them like this. Say cell last. That's your last geometry. I'm going to put this in a new folder. I'm going to turn this off so I don't see things over there. Okay. And I'm going to select all of this and say curve Boolean and select the outline. And I'm going to use this line to cut my geometry. Say, okay, so that is going to be my main geometry, and then say I'm going to split with my lines. Okay. Then cell curve, I'm going to hide all these curves. And then I can use that as some of my landscape treatment, for example. Maybe that is my some kind of green land or something. It's up to you. Oh, let me change the material. For example, yeah. And if you have that, you can always okay, so I'm going to move this down around 3. I'm just watching this number here. And I say dupe border, then extrude curve for 3 meter, 3 units. Okay, extrude curve for 3 units. Yeah. Yeah, you can also invert that, so it's extruded out. So something like that, you can use this method to control your landscape or design something really unique for yourself. Are you still alive? Okay, that was my tutorial. I hope it was helpful.
It was very helpful.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.